Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The soccer ball sailed through the air, a perfect arc cutting across the clear blue sky. With a practiced leap, Gian intercepted its trajectory, his muscular chest absorbing the impact as he brought the ball under control. His teammates cheered as he deftly maneuvered past the opposing players, his cleats kicking up divots of grass with each powerful stride. "Go, Gian!" The shouts from the sidelines spurred him on as he approached the goal. With a final burst of speed, he launched the ball, watching it soar past the goalkeeper's outstretched hands and into the net. The crowd erupted in cheers as Gian's teammates mobbed him, slapping his back and ruffling his sweat-dampened hair. "Another game-winning goal!" His best friend and fellow forward, Miguel, grinned as he threw an arm around John's shoulders. "You're on fire this season, man!" John smiled, basking in the glow of victory and camaraderie. This was what he lived for, the thrill of competition, the rush of adrenaline, the feeling of belonging that came with being part of a team. And yet, as the excitement of the moment faded, a familiar disquiet settled in his chest. Later, in the locker room, John toweled off after his shower, half listening to his teammates' animated chatter about their plans for the evening. "Hey, John!" Miguel called out. "We're hitting up that new club downtown. You in?" John hesitated, his mind already drifting to the evening he had planned. "Thanks, but I've got a ton of studying to do," he lied smoothly. "Maybe next time." Miguel shrugged. "You're lost, dude. Don't work too hard." As his teammates filed out, their voices fading down the hallway, Gian let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He finished dressing quickly, stuffing his uniform into his gym bag before heading out into the cool evening air. The walk back to his off-campus apartment was mercifully short. Gian's heart raced with anticipation as he climbed the stairs, fumbling with his keys in his haste to get inside. As soon as the door clicked shut behind him, he leaned against it, closing his eyes and allowing the mask he wore all day to slip away. Gian moved through his small apartment with purpose, drawing the curtains and double-checking that the door was locked. Only then did he allow himself to approach the closet, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached for the false back he'd installed months ago. Hidden behind his collection of jerseys and jeans was a world of soft fabrics and shimmering colors. Gian's breath caught as he ran his hand over a silky blue blouse, marveling at how different it felt from the rough cotton of his uniform. With reverence, he selected an outfit, the blouse, a flowing skirt, and a pair of low heels he'd been practicing walking in. As he changed, John felt the weight of expectation and obligation falling away. Each item of clothing was a step closer to feeling like his true self. He perched on the edge of his bed, opening the makeup kit he kept hidden under a loose floorboard. With careful, practiced strokes, he applied foundation, blush, and a hint of eyeshadow. In these private moments, she was Josie, studied her reflection in the mirror. The person staring back at her was both familiar and wonderfully new. Josie smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes in a way John's smiles rarely did. "Hello, beautiful," she whispered to her reflection, her voice soft and higher than usual. For the next few hours, Josie allowed herself to simply exist. She practiced her walk in the heels, relishing the click of them against the hardwood floors. She curled up on the couch with a romance novel she'd never dare read in public, losing herself in the story of star-crossed lovers. As the night wore on, Josie's contentment was tinged with a growing sense of longing. These stolen moments of authenticity were precious, but they were also lonely. She yearned to share this part of herself with someone, anyone who might understand. A notification from her phone pulled Josie from her reverie. It was a message from Miguel, accompanied by a slightly blurry photo of their teammates at the club. "Wish you were here, man," the text read. "You're missing out!" Josie stared at the image, feeling the familiar divide between her two selves widening. She thought about responding, but what could she say? That she was having the time of her life alone in her apartment, dressed in clothes that would shock and confuse her friends. With a heavy sigh, Josie began the process of transforming back into John. She carefully removed her makeup, tucking away each item as if storing away pieces of her soul. The skirt and blouse were gently folded and hidden once more behind the false wall of the closet. As John crawled into bed that night, he felt the familiar ache of living a divided life. He dreamed of a world where he could be fully himself, where the strength and skill he displayed on the soccer field could coexist with the grace and femininity he felt in his heart. The next few weeks passed in a blur of classes, practices, and games. Gian threw himself into his routines, pushing his body to its limits on the field and forcing his mind to focus on his studies. But in quiet moments, his thoughts drifted to the hidden clothes in his closet and the freedom they represented. It was after a particularly grueling practice that Miguel approached John in the locker room, a mischievous glint in his eye.
"So, there's this party coming up,"
Miguel began, leaning against the locker next to John's.
"It's a costume thing. Real exclusive. I managed to snag a couple of invites."
John raised an eyebrow, trying to mask his sudden interest.
"A costume party? Isn't it a little early for Halloween?"
Miguel laughed.
"Nah, man, it's not that kind of costume party. It's more like a chance to be someone else for a night, you know? No judgment. Total anonymity. You in?"
John's heart raced as he considered the possibility. A chance to be someone else, with no judgment? It sounded too good to be true. "I don't know, Miguel. Parties aren't really my thing."
"Come on, John,"
Miguel pressed.
"You never come out with us anymore. One night won't kill you, and who knows? You might have fun letting loose for once."
After a moment's hesitation, John nodded.
"All right, I'm in. When is it?" "This Saturday."
Miguel grinned, slapping John on the back.
"I'll text you the details. And remember, the whole point is to be someone completely different. Go wild with it."
As Miguel walked away, John's mind was already whirling with possibilities. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to bridge the gap between his two selves. The days leading up to the party were a mix of anticipation and anxiety for Gian. He found himself distracted during practices, earning a few concerned looks from his coach. In his apartment, he spent hours trying on different combinations of clothes, attempting to find the perfect outfit that would allow Josie to shine. Finally, the night of the party arrived. Gian stood in front of his mirror, heart pounding as he applied the finishing touches to his makeup. He had chosen a stunning princess-style dress in a deep, midnight blue. The bodice was fitted, accentuating a figure he had carefully crafted with strategic padding, while the skirt flared out in layers of tulle. A delicate tiara nestled in his carefully styled hair completed the look. Josie took a deep breath, studying her reflection. She barely recognized herself, and yet she had never felt more authentically herself. With trembling hands, she sent a quick text to Miguel, letting him know she was on her way. The Uber ride to the party location was nerve-wracking. Josie kept her head down, worried that the driver might somehow see through her disguise. But as they pulled up to a large, secluded house on the outskirts of town, she felt a surge of excitement. Music pulsed from inside the house, and costumed figures milled about on the sprawling front lawn. Josie stepped out of the car, her heels sinking slightly into the soft grass. She took a moment to steady herself, both physically and mentally, before making her way towards the entrance. As she approached the door, a tall figure in an elaborate pirate costume stepped into her path. It took Josie a moment to recognize Miguel beneath the eye patch and fake beard.
Wow,
Miguel said, his visible eye widening as he took in Josie's appearance. You really went all out. I almost didn't recognize you, John. The princess look suits you, man. Josie felt a flutter of panic at being recognized so quickly, but Miguel's easy acceptance calmed her nerves. She pitched her voice higher, embracing the persona she had created. Thank you, kind sir. Shall we enter the ball? Miguel laughed, offering his arm with an exaggerated bow.
Of course, Your Highness. Allow me to escort you.
As they entered the house, Josie was overwhelmed by the sights and sounds. The spacious living room had been transformed into a dance floor with colorful lights pulsing in time with the music. Costumed partygoers filled every available space, their outfits ranging from the fantastical to the bizarre. Drink? Miguel shouted over the music, gesturing towards a makeshift bar in the corner. Josie nodded, grateful for the chance to steady her nerves. As Miguel made his way through the crowd, she found herself alone for the first time since arriving. She smoothed her hands over her skirt, feeling simultaneously exposed and invisible in the sea of costumes. Hey there, princess! A voice called out. Josie turned to see a person dressed as a knight approaching, their face obscured by an ornate helmet. Care to dance? For a moment, Josie hesitated, but the anonymity of the party and the freedom of her disguise gave her courage. She smiled, taking the knight's offered hand. I'd love to. As they moved onto the dance floor, Josie felt a sense of exhilaration. The music pulsed around them, and she allowed herself to get lost in the rhythm. Her partner was a skilled dancer, guiding her through the crowd with ease.
You move beautifully,
the knight commented, voice muffled by the helmet. Have you done this before? Josie laughed, the sound surprisingly natural. Would you believe this is my first ball? The song changed to a slower tempo, and the knight pulled Josie closer. She tensed for a moment, worried about giving herself away, but her partner's touch remained respectful and gentle. Well, you could have fooled me, the knight said. You seem perfectly at home here. As they swayed to the music, Josie felt a sense of rightness that she had never experienced before. Here, in this moment, she was free to be herself without fear or judgment. She closed her eyes, savoring the feeling. The song ended, and Josie opened her eyes to find Miguel approaching with drinks in hand. The knight bowed deeply. Thank you for the dance, princess. Perhaps we'll meet again before the clock strikes midnight. As the knight disappeared into the crowd, Miguel handed Josie a colorful cocktail.
Looks like you're having fun.
He grinned.
I've never seen you dance like that before.
Josie took a sip of her drink, grateful for the low lighting that hid her blush. I guess I'm just embracing the spirit of the party, she said, her voice still pitched higher than normal. Miguel nodded approvingly.
That's what it's all about, man. Being someone else for a night, living out your fantasies. No judgment, remember?
His words struck a chord deep within Josie. She looked at her friend, wondering not for the first time how he might react if he knew the truth. Would he still be so accepting if he realized this wasn't just a costume, but a glimpse of her true self? As the night wore on, Josie found herself relaxing more and more. She danced with abandon, chatted with strangers, and even allowed herself to flirt a little. The princess dress, which had felt so foreign at first, now seemed like a second skin. It was nearing midnight when Josie found herself out on the back patio, taking a moment to catch her breath. The cool night air was a relief after the heat of the crowded house. She leaned against the railing, looking out over the moonlit garden.
Penny for your thoughts, princess.
Josie turned to see the knight from earlier, helmet now removed to reveal a kind face with twinkling eyes. I was just thinking about how magical this night has been, Josie admitted. Like a dream I never want to wake up from. The knight nodded, leaning on the railing beside her.
I know what you mean. There's something freeing about being someone else, isn't there? About showing a side of yourself that you usually keep hidden.
Josie's breath caught in her throat. Yes, she whispered. Exactly that. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the muffled sounds of the party drifting out from inside.
Can I ask you something?
The knight said suddenly.
And feel free not to answer if it's too personal.
Josie nodded, curiosity piqued. Is tonight the first time you've dressed like this? Or is it something you do regularly? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Josie felt her heart racing, torn between the ingrained instinct to deflect and the desperate desire to be honest. She began, then paused, gathering her courage. This isn't the first time, but it is the first time I've done it in public. The knight's expression softened with understanding.
Thank you for trusting me with that. It takes a lot of bravery to be true to yourself, even for one night.
Tears pricked at the corners of Josie's eyes, threatening to ruin her carefully applied makeup. I just wish... She trailed off, unable to fully articulate the longing in her heart.
That it didn't have to be just for one night?
The knight finished gently. Josie nodded, a tear escaping despite her best efforts. The knight reached out, hesitating for a moment before gently wiping away the tear.
Hey,
they said softly.
You're not alone, you know.
There are people out there who will accept you for who you are, princess dress or soccer uniform. Before Josie could respond, the patio door burst open, and Miguel stumbled out, clearly having enjoyed his fair share of the party's offerings.
There you are!
He exclaimed, throwing an arm around Josie's shoulders.
Been looking all over for you, man. It's almost time for the big reveal.
Josie froze, panic rising in her chest. She had forgotten about the unmasking tradition that often accompanied costume parties. The thought of everyone seeing her, of her teammates realizing who she really was, filled her with dread. The knight seemed to sense her distress.
Actually, they said smoothly, I was just about to ask the princess here for one last dance before the night ends. You don't mind, do you?
Miguel waved his hand magnanimously.
Be my guest. But don't take too long. You don't want to miss the fun inside.
As Miguel weaved his way back into the house, the knight turned to Josie.
Are you okay? We don't have to go back in if you're not comfortable.
Josie took a deep breath, weighing her options. Part of her wanted to run, to hide away, and never confront the reality of who she was, but a stronger part, the part that had been growing all night, urged her to stay. I think I want to go back in, she said slowly. But I'm scared. The knight offered their hand. Then allow me to be your gallant protector, princess. Whatever happens in there, you won't face it alone. Josie took the offered hand, drawing strength from the simple gesture of support. Together, they made their way back into the house, where the party was reaching its crescendo. The music faded out as they entered, replaced by the sound of excited chatter. In the center of the room, a small stage had been set up, and a person dressed as a ringmaster was calling for everyone's attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the ringmaster announced. It's time for the grand unmasking. But remember, the spirit of this party is acceptance and celebration. No matter what is revealed, we're all here to support each other. Josie's grip on the knight's hand tightened as costumed figures began to make their way to the stage, each taking a turn to dramatically reveal their true identity. There were gasps and cheers as friends recognized each other, followed by hugs and laughter. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, the knight whispered. We can slip out now. No one would notice.
Josie looked around the room, her eyes landing on Miguel, who was gesturing excitedly for her to join the line for the stage. In that moment, she made her decision. No, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm tired of hiding. Whatever happens, it's time to be me. With a deep breath, Josie made her way to the stage. She could feel eyes on her as she climbed the steps, the midnight blue of her dress shimmering under the lights. The ringmaster gave her an encouraging smile as she took center stage.
Ah, our mysterious princess, the ringmaster announced. Let's see who's hiding beneath that tiara, shall we?
Josie closed her eyes, her hands trembling as she reached for the tiara. In one smooth motion, she removed it, along with the wig she had carefully pinned beneath it. She heard gasps from the crowd as her short, dark hair was revealed. Opening her eyes, Josie scanned the faces before her. She saw shock, confusion, and, in some cases, dawning understanding. Her gaze landed on Miguel, whose mouth was hanging open in surprise. My name is Josie, she said, her voice clear and strong, despite her racing heart. Some of you might know me as John, but this is who I really am. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from somewhere in the back of the room, someone started to clap. The applause spread, growing louder until it filled the room. Josie felt tears welling up in her eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected show of support. As she stepped down from the stage on shaky legs, she was immediately engulfed in a hug. It was Miguel, his pirate costume askew and tears in his eyes.
Gian, Josie,
he corrected himself.
I had no idea. I'm so sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't be yourself around me.
Josie hugged him back fiercely. You have nothing to be sorry for. I wasn't ready to tell anyone until tonight. As they pulled apart, Josie felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see the knight, who had removed their helmet to reveal a warm smile. I told you that you were brave, they said. And I meant what I said earlier. You're not alone in this. The rest of the night passed in a blur of conversations and explanations. Some of Josie's teammates were there, and while there was initial awkwardness, most were supportive, if a bit confused. She found herself surrounded by people eager to understand, to learn how they could support her. As the party wound down in the early hours of the morning, Josie found herself back on the patio, watching the sun begin to rise. She felt exhausted, but exhilarated, as if a weight she had carried for years had finally been lifted.
Hey,
Miguel said softly, joining her at the railing. How are you feeling? Josie considered the question. Scared, she admitted, but also free. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can breathe. Miguel nodded, his expression serious.
Listen, I can't pretend to understand everything you're going through, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever you need, whatever happens next, you've got me in your corner.
Tears welled up in Josie's eyes once more. Thank you, she whispered. That means more than you know. As they stood there, watching the sky lighten, Josie knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be difficult conversations, potential rejection, and a lot of changes to navigate. But for the first time, she felt hope. Hope that she could live as her true self. Hope that she would find acceptance and love. The princess dress she wore was just fabric and tulle, but it represented so much more. It was a symbol of her journey, of the courage it took to show the world her authentic self. As the first rays of sunlight touched her face, Josie smiled, ready to step into a new day and a new life, one where she could finally be whole. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!